The earth shook as the second excavator's claw sank into the solar panels, splintering glass and sending shards flying into the air. Sparks fizzed from the smashed electrical boxes, the hum of clean energy silenced with each violent strike. Captain Raymond Thorne stood just beyond the fence line, jaw clenched, fists trembling. His $5,000 solar farm, which powered his entire off-grid home, was being destroyed in broad daylight. And they were doing it without warning. A woman in a navy pencil skirt and crisp HOA badge waved her hand with arrogant satisfaction. Behind her, two men from a hired crew chuckled as they moved to the next row of panels. Raymond didn't say a word. He turned slowly, walked to his garage, and opened a locked cabinet. Inside hung a perfectly ironed military uniform, 4 stars gleaming. The badge read, General Raymond Thorne. United States Army. They have no idea who they're messing with, he muttered. Cut to black. 3 months earlier. Raymond Thorne, 57, had retired after 33 years of military service. He had led rescue missions, commanded thousands of soldiers, and even received the Medal of Honor for valor in combat. But after decades of noise and war, he craved peace. So he bought a quiet plot of land on the outskirts of a cozy HOA-managed neighborhood in North Carolina, not within the neighborhood, but beside it. Still, the HOA tried to claim jurisdiction. He wanted self-sufficiency. He wanted to live quietly, away from the bureaucracies he had spent his life defending. So, he installed a beautiful solar farm, 20 sleek panels gleaming across the back of his property. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. It powered his entire house, garage, and even his small greenhouse where he grew tomatoes. Everything was perfect, until the HOA came knocking. Karen Bradshaw, the new HOA president, showed up one Saturday morning with her clipboard and fake smile. General Thorne, she said, we need to discuss your solar panels. They violate the aesthetic guidelines of the surrounding community. Raymond blinked. This isn't part of your community. I don't pay your dues. Karen smiled wider, our bylaws give us extended authority within the viewing perimeter of the subdivision. Your panels are in plain sight from Maple Creek Lane. We'll need them removed by next week. He thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Raymond tried to explain. He showed her his land deed. He pointed out that his property line had nothing to do with their neighborhood. He even offered to build a privacy hedge to block the view. But Karen didn't care. She wanted full control. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Raymond began receiving HOA violation letters, one after another. They accused him of illegal construction, visual pollution, and even creating a safety hazard with his solar panels. Then came the fines. $100. Then $500. Then $1,200. Raymond ignored them all. One morning, he walked outside to find a red sticker slapper across his solar panel unit, final warning destruction ordered. Raymond stared at it for a long time. He knew what this meant. He had seen tactics like this overseas, intimidation by bureaucracy. A small group trying to impose their will, believing no one would fight back. But this was his land. His home. And these were his rules. He called the county records office. They confirmed that his land was zoned for residential agriculture. No HOA authority extended to his property. He filed a formal complaint. But days passed with no response. Then, on a Tuesday morning, Raymond returned from the hardware store to find 2 bulldozers rumbling down the dirt path toward his solar farm. Karen stood beside them, arms crossed. We gave you every chance, she said. Now we're removing this eyesore. Raymond stepped forward. You don't have permission. She smirked. You don't have a choice. As the excavators roared to life and the first panel shattered beneath their claws, Raymond didn't yell. He didn't run. He simply reached into his truck, pulled out his phone, and made one call. This is General Thorne. I need immediate support on a property dispute turned criminal destruction. Confirm identity code Delta 30. A voice replied on the other end, understood, General. Units are en route. Raymond hung up and turned to Karen. You just declared war on the United States Army. Raymond Thorne, a retired 4-star general, watched in silence as his $5,000 solar farm was torn apart by HOA-ordered bulldozers. But the moment they struck the first panel, he made a call to military command. His calm words. You just declared war on the United States Army. The machines clattered in the background, digging up more of his panels, while Karen Bradshaw stood with her arms smugly folded. She didn't flinch when Raymond made the phone call. In her eyes, he was just another grumpy old man clinging to some fantasy of authority. She didn't know who he really was. Raymond turned and walked toward his home. As the sound of destruction continued, he entered a secure room in his basement and opened a black case. Inside was a digital tablet directly connected to military legal services and federal land mapping databases. He tapped in his coordinates and uploaded photos of the damage in real time. Status: federal property infringement, civilian destruction of veteran-owned infrastructure. He wasn't just defending himself now. He was filing federal charges. Upstairs, the ground trembled as the second excavator chewed through the frame of his solar converter. He glanced up once, then calmly locked the screen and stood tall. Time to remind them who I am. 23 minutes later, just as Karen was clapping and giving orders to her crew, the rumble of tires echoed down the dirt path. Not bulldozers this time, but military-grade Humvees. Karen turned, her mouth slowly dropping open. 2 Humvees pulled up. Then a third. Soldiers in full uniform stepped out, followed by a sharply dressed woman in a dark green suit. General Thorne, she asked as she approached. He nodded. She turned to Karen, flashing a badge. Office of Military Civil Protections, Federal Response Division. Step away from the property. Immediately. Karen laughed nervously. Excuse me. This is an HOA matter. The woman didn't blink. You just destroyed a government-registered veteran energy project. That's a federal offense. You're now under investigation. Karen's face went pale. The HOA crew looked at each other, unsure if they should continue. Then came the moment that changed everything. Raymond pulled a folder from his briefcase and handed it to the lead officer. This includes military clearance of this property, satellite logs of the destruction, and HOA letters that show coordinated intent to sabotage. The officer turned to Karen. You are to remain on site. You and your crew will be detained for questioning. Cliffhanger, a hidden agenda. As Karen was frozen in place, eyes wide and hands trembling, one of the soldiers whispered into the general's ear. Sir, we just scanned HOA digital records. There's something bigger going on. These attacks weren't about aesthetics. They're tied to land acquisition fraud. Looks like they've been trying to force veterans off surrounding plots too. Raymond's eyes narrowed. So it's not just about me. The soldier nodded. No, sir. It's a coordinated operation. And your land is at the center. Raymond stepped forward, just inches from Karen's face. You're not just going to jail for destroying my panels. You're going to be the reason this entire HOA collapses. Karen blinked, confused. What are you talking about? Raymond's voice dropped to a whisper. I know what you did to the veterans who lived here before me. And I have every document to prove it. Karen Bradshaw, the power-hungry HOA president, thought she was just dealing with a stubborn retiree. But after ordering the destruction of General Raymond Thorne's solar farm, she unwittingly sparked a federal-level investigation. Now, with the military on site and HOA records revealing a disturbing plot against veterans, the real battle is just beginning. Inside a temporary command tent set up beside Raymond's ruined solar field, officers were reviewing files pulled from the HOA's server. The sun had dipped behind the trees, but tension still hung thick in the air. A large screen displayed a map of the entire neighborhood, including surrounding parcels of land. Raymond paced as a young intelligence officer, Sergeant McLean, explained the findings. "Sir, here's what we discovered. Over the last 3 years, this HOA has filed over 24 complaints against property owners who were all veterans." Raymond interrupted. McLean nodded. "Yes, sir. All retired military. They were fined repeatedly until most either sold off their property or abandoned it." "And their land?" Raymond asked, eyes narrowed. "Absorbed by the HOA," McLean confirmed. "Then resold to a private developer linked to Karen Bradshaw's cousin." Raymond clenched his fists. It wasn't about rules. It was a scheme, targeting vulnerable veterans, exploiting bureaucracy to force them out and cash in on the land. He exhaled slowly. "We're not letting this slide." While the investigation ramped up, Karen wasn't done yet. That night, she met secretly with 2 board members in her luxury SUV parked near the cul-de-sac. "This is getting out of control," one board member whispered. "They've got soldiers walking around the neighborhood like it's a war zone." Karen gritted her teeth. "We can still fix this. We just need to shift the narrative. If we can spin this as property defacement or threats made by Thorne, we can file a restraining order. Turn him into the villain." "But the evidence can be buried," Karen snapped. "We've done it before. We just need to get ahead of this before the media catches wind." What Karen didn't know was that her entire conversation was being recorded, from a drone quietly hovering above her car. Raymond was already 3 steps ahead. By morning, a clip of the solar panel destruction had gone viral on social media. A young soldier had posted the footage with the caption, "HOA destroys disabled veteran's solar farm, then finds out he's a 4-star general." The clip exploded. Within hours, news vans lined the streets. Protesters showed up with signs that read, "Protect our vets," and "HOA tyranny must end." Karen emerged from her home, hiding behind oversized sunglasses and trying to look composed. A reporter shouted, "Ms. Bradshaw, did you knowingly target retired veterans for land grabs?" She didn't answer. But then, a new black SUV pulled up. Out stepped a man in a dark suit, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, Inspector General's office. He walked past the reporters, straight to Karen. "You're being summoned for questioning," he said. Effective immediately. Back in his now partially rebuilt solar field, Raymond stood surrounded by a growing crowd of supporters. Veterans from the community, some in wheelchairs, others with canes or caps covered in patches from Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, all stood united. A woman approached him. "General Thorne, I'm Lisa. My father was one of the first veterans the HOA drove out. He passed away in a nursing home last year. Thank you for exposing them." Raymond nodded, his voice steady but heavy. "No one should have to fight another war after retirement." He turned to the crowd. "Today, we fight back, not with weapons, but with truth, with unity, and with the law." The crowd cheered. Then a soldier stepped forward, whispering into Raymond's ear. "Sir, the HOA just filed a lawsuit against you. They're claiming emotional distress and property damage." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "They want a war," he said. He turned toward his home and opened a case file marked confidential, HOA backdoor dealings. They're about to get one. As the media broadcast images of angry board members, legal threats, and growing public outrage, Raymond made one last call. "This is General Thorne. I need clearance to declassify Operation Phoenix Shield. I believe elements of it are relevant to the ongoing civilian investigation." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Sir, that's highly sensitive." Raymond replied calmly, "If we expose what's buried in that file, this HOA will be finished, and so will their developer partners. After uncovering a twisted scheme where the HOA targeted veterans to seize their land, General Raymond Thorne discovered the corruption ran deeper, tied to a private developer and buried in classified military files. When the HOA filed a bogus lawsuit against him, he requested permission to declassify Operation Phoenix Shield, a former military project that just might bring the entire HOA down. Inside a federal conference room surrounded by plain walls and dim lighting, Raymond sat across from Colonel Patrice Mendez, a longtime ally from his years in intelligence operations. "Ray," she said, leaning forward, "Operation Phoenix Shield was buried for a reason." "I understand," Raymond replied. "But some of the surveillance tools we used in that op were repurposed by defense contractors, one of whom is now funneling money through a land development company tied to this HOA." Colonel Mendez blinked. "You're saying the HOA is being funded by a shell company connected to Phoenix Shield?" Raymond nodded slowly. "I've traced it all. Karen Bradshaw's cousin isn't just a developer. He's a subcontractor who worked on drone reconnaissance for Phoenix Shield before it was shut down. He took the tech. Now he's using it to identify veteran-owned lands to exploit." Mendez sighed. "You realize what you're saying?" Raymond leaned in. "If we expose this, it won't just collapse the HOA. It could bring down a nationwide scam." After a long pause, she nodded. "I'll authorize the declassification. But Ray, be careful. The people involved in this don't play fair." The next morning, at a live press conference streamed across national news, Raymond stood before a podium set up in front of his partially restored solar farm. Behind him stood rows of veterans, military personnel, and local supporters holding signs like "Power to Vets" and "Expose HOA Fraud." Raymond spoke with a calm but commanding tone. Operation Phoenix Shield was once a classified military program designed to detect threats using advanced AI and satellite imaging. Today, I'm here to tell you that some of that technology was stolen, and it's being used, not to protect us, but to target America's heroes. He clicked a remote, and the screen behind him showed satellite images, drone logs, and transaction records. All tied to one developer, who just happens to fund this HOA. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scrambled for questions. Raymond paused, then added, "I've submitted this evidence to federal prosecutors. I'm also filing a countersuit against the HOA for criminal destruction of federal property and veteran targeting." Inside her darkened home, Karen Bradshaw watched the press conference unfold with clenched teeth and tear-streaked cheeks. Her phone rang. It was her lawyer. "You need to pack a bag," he said, voice cold. "The FBI just issued a search warrant for your financial records." Karen shouted, "This isn't fair. He ambushed us with military power." The lawyer replied bluntly, "You destroyed military-registered property, Karen. You crossed a line." But Karen wasn't done. She stormed out of her home, past the news vans, and barged into the county courthouse. "I'm filing a motion for a gag order," she screamed. "General Thorne is using classified information to influence public opinion." The clerk blinked. "Ma'am, the documents have been lawfully declassified." Karen's face went pale. Then a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see a stern man in a black suit. "Karen Bradshaw, you're being served." A thick envelope was placed in her hand. Federal indictment. Meanwhile, back at Raymond's property, he watched as trucks arrived to deliver new solar panels, donated by a coalition of veteran nonprofits and clean energy companies inspired by his story. As the panels were installed, children waved flags, and neighbors from outside the HOA came to help with setup. The community was rebuilding. A young veteran approached Raymond, tears in his eyes. "Sir, I almost gave up. Thought no one cared what we went through. But watching you fight this, it gave me hope again." Raymond placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "We may be retired, but we never stop serving." Then, a reporter interrupted with breaking news. Karen Bradshaw and 3 HOA board members have just been taken into custody by federal agents. The developer she worked with is also under investigation. This case could spark a nationwide audit of HOA practices. The crowd erupted in applause. Raymond gave one nod and turned to face his newly rebuilt solar farm, its glass glistening under the afternoon sun. But as he turned to go inside, his phone rang. A familiar voice on the other end, "General Thorne, we have a problem." Raymond paused. "What now?" "There's been another HOA, different state, same tactics. They've already driven out 6 veterans. And we just learned, they've been in contact with the same developer." Raymond's eyes narrowed. "Looks like our work isn't done yet." After bringing down the corrupt HOA and exposing a national scheme tied to a shady developer exploiting veterans, General Raymond Thorne learns the problem isn't over. Another HOA in a different state is pulling the same tactics, and the same developer is involved. For Raymond, justice isn't local anymore. It's national. Raymond sat alone in his study, the soft hum of his new solar panels filtering in from the window. The house was quiet, but his mind wasn't. He stared at the map on his screen, red dots marking veteran-owned homes across the country where similar HOA complaints had been filed. He zoomed in on one in Arizona. Another in Texas. A cluster in Nevada. Each one was the same story. Veteran moves into a peaceful home. HOA begins nitpicking every detail. Fines and threats escalate. Property is abandoned or sold. Developer swoops in. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. And this developer, Concord Estates Limited, with ties to Karen Bradshaw's cousin, was at the center of it all. Raymond leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. This isn't about one HOA anymore, it's a war on veterans. 2 weeks later, General Thorne stood on a stage in Washington, D.C., this time not in front of his home, but on Capitol Hill. Veterans from all 50 states stood behind him, shoulder to shoulder, men and women of every race, background, and branch of service. He spoke clearly. HOAs were created to keep neighborhoods clean and organized. But they've been hijacked by people who treat power like a weapon. Today, we launched the Veterans Land Protection Act, with bipartisan backing, to ensure no HOA can ever harass or drive out those who served this country again. The crowd erupted. News stations broadcast it nationwide. Social media lit up with hashtags like #ProtectOurVets and #HOAReformNow. Raymond didn't stop there. He teamed up with whistleblowers from within the Concord Estates Group, veterans in cybersecurity, and retired JAG officers to dig deeper. They uncovered forged documents, fake violations, secret land deals, even offshore accounts. Within days, federal agents raided 3 more HOA offices across the country. The scandal was growing. But just as the Veterans Land Protection Act gained traction in Congress, Raymond received a message in a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo of his home, taken from a long-distance scope. A note was scribbled across it. "Back off. Or we finish what Karen couldn't." Raymond's jaw tightened. For the first time in a long time, he felt that old familiar burn, the battlefield instincts kicking in. He didn't panic. He fortified his home, alerted federal security, and quietly tracked the source of the threat using military satellite pings. Within 48 hours, he traced it to a cabin rented by one of Concord's private contractors, a former mercenary now moonlighting as security. He didn't need to call in a SWAT team. He went himself. Raymond arrived at the cabin just as the mercenary was packing up to flee. The man spun, surprised to see the older soldier at his doorstep. "You," he scoffed. "You came alone." Raymond took one step forward, calm as stone. "I don't need backup when I've faced worse in the desert, the jungle, and enemy territory. You're just another coward with a threat." The man lunged, but Raymond blocked, countered, and had him pinned in seconds. Within minutes, the local sheriff arrived, thanks to a quiet GPS ping Raymond had sent on approach. "Charges are being filed," the sheriff said. "Federal threats, conspiracy, fraud. You're done." 3 months later, the Veterans Land Protection Act passed with overwhelming support. Federal regulations now restricted HOAs from fining homeowners for non-essential infractions, targeting protected veteran-owned properties, accepting developer kickbacks, operating without county-level transparency. Concord Estates was dissolved. Karen Bradshaw and several executives received prison sentences for conspiracy, fraud, and veteran discrimination. And Raymond? He didn't fade into the background. He founded a nonprofit, Shield and Soil, which offered legal defense, solar energy grants, and housing protections for veterans facing HOA or land bullying. One afternoon, as Raymond walked his property, now lined with flowers and humming with solar energy, a little boy from next door ran up to him. "Mr. Raymond," the boy said. "Are you really a general?" Raymond chuckled. "I used to be. Now I just help people." The boy looked serious. "Well, my dad says you're a hero." Raymond smiled, his eyes misty. "Your dad's a good man. Tell him I said thank you." As the sun dipped low and bathed the land in golden light, Raymond turned to look at his house, no longer just a home, but a symbol. A place where the fight for freedom continued, not with bullets or bombs, but with truth, courage, and the will to stand up when no one else would. If you like this story, comment, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.